Now up to this point, we've created some very nice animated menu systems using very simple buttons. I have some more examples of what you can do with these simple buttons by adding some more interesting animation. Here is an example of a book, and if we do a control test movie, the book, when you click on it, opens up into a series of pages. So if we look at the timeline for this movie clip, notice that I have again the collapsed and expanded states. And same concept, just a bit more cleverly done than the examples that I showed you. But let me show you some student work using this basic scripting that I've showed you just to inspire you into the kinds of designs you can do. Here's another one. If we do a control test movie and we this time roll over the button, it expands out. Series of, I guess, slate rocks there that open up, and again double clicking on the movie clip brings us to the movie clip timeline with the tween animations there. So it's entirely possible using, again, very simple buttons to create quite fancy menu systems. Now if we move from simple buttons to more complex buttons involving movie clips and invisible buttons, you can get to some very sophisticated kinds of designs like this one. This actually has some sound effects that I'll play for you now. And here's another example of a menu system. Rather than using simple buttons, using what's called complex buttons. In these two examples, there are movie clips playing in the over state of the button. So let's go ahead and close down the Shockwave player here and have a look at the timelines for these examples to show you the application of these animated menus using complex buttons. Here on the timeline of the first example, you can see there is a series of buttons here on the stage. If I double click on one of the buttons, I get to this button timeline. In the up and down frames or states, I have graphics, but in the over state, if I double click on the graphic, notice that I have a movie clip with a tween in there of the dog bowl tilting. The dog bowl isn't even flipping, it's just tilting, and then our brain tends to fill in the blanks and make it appear as if it's spinning over. When we roll over it, in this case, since that animation is in the over state of the button. Here's another example of a complex button. This one has a shape tween in the over state. See how it's changing from that oval into a more complex shape. So if we drill down into this button, you'll notice that there is the movie clip in the over state right here. This one I have to actually look at it in the library. It's a little bit more complicated. But if we open up one of these buttons here, you can see that there is the green shape tween changing the oval into, actually it's a star. I didn't notice that when we looked at it on the main timeline. The technique is simple, but the effect is giving you a complex button that actually looks quite a bit more sophisticated than the buttons we've been working with so far. One more time, let's have a look at that by testing the movie. Notice they're all the same, just different colors, but very nice animated buttons. Then the last example is this one. Let's bring this up again. Very complex button movements here involving, in this case, both movie clips and invisible buttons. So let's have a look at this timeline. Notice if we come up here to the area in the timeline where the buttons are, and if we double click on one of these, that's an invisible button there. Notice that I get a movie clip with a set of movements in there, including keyframes, motion tweens. If we bring up the Properties Inspector and then click on some of these buttons, you can see that these are in fact buttons and movie clips combined. Let's preview this one more time to give the effect of everything working together, including, let's turn up the volume here, the sound effects, very effective. So there you have some examples of the kinds of complex menu systems that you can create using action scripting, as well as complex buttons involving movie clips and invisible buttons. So let me now move on and demonstrate our last menu script for this section, involving the use of complex buttons, including movie clips and invisible buttons, somewhat similar to the examples that I just showed you.